We'll get rolling. Hello, good morning, everyone. Welcome back to session 4, strategic planning. Delighted to see all of your faces, and we'll get rolling right away. I'm going to pass it off to Lisa.
Oh, okay. Good morning, everyone. As Rebecca said, welcome to Strategic Planning. We have a full day today. Again, I'm Lisa Carlson with the center. Y'all know our whole team by now. You guys are experts. I'd like to continuously, though, thank our sponsors, Triangle Community Foundation, Guilford Nonprofit Consortium, and Duke Continuing Studies for making these sessions happen with the Institute. So for today's agenda, we have a pretty packed day. Once again, going over strategic planning. Here's our agenda for you today. I think Dr. Palmer will go through it as clearly and step by step as she normally does to make and try to give it to you in smaller chunks so that you will not feel so overwhelmed. Can't promise you won't feel overwhelmed anyway, but it'll be an easier way to feel overwhelmed. How about that? And just as a quick heads up, after and as you know, as we've been doing in the past, we'll build in our breaks in between. We'll fill out the group to see how you're doing for our breaks. So that's why it's not specifically stated on here. I think we've been doing good with breaks. Otherwise, you guys tell us in the chat, hey, we need a break, and that's fine. So as a quick heads up, we're going to go into a short icebreaker, but we're going to ask, and if I might ask the group now, and I think we gave you the heads up during our wraparound, that we'd like to have 1 to 2 participants be willing to share a high level overview of their strategic plan, and hope that we can find a volunteer or two just to go over it, not details, just give us your components. Now I have to switch screens. So if someone is volunteering and I can't see you, would you mind just voicing it? Would be great. What brave soul do we have out there just to share your strategic plan? Come on, just one person would be great. Anyone? Well, how about this? I'm gonna let you think about it. We're gonna go into our icebreaker, and then maybe when you've had a chance to talk through the icebreaker a little bit, you'll feel more comfortable. Okay, so let's go. Rebecca.
All right. This is the dark cabin. We're very on theme with this time of year. Very spooky, as you can see by this picture. But your task as a group in your breakouts is to imagine that you are alone in a dark cabin and all you have is one match. And which of the following would you light first? The oil lamp, fireplace, or a candle? And your goal is to go into your breakouts, reach consensus, and have one of your team members be willing to report back on what you all decided based on your deliberations, and be thinking about how this process goes between reaching consensus as a group. And then we'll come back in, I believe, 10 minutes. I think we've got a large enough group of folks here to go ahead and set these breakout rooms together. We're going to do groups of 4, so not everyone will be able to report back, but we do hope to have a handful of you kind of report back on what the process was like. So let me go ahead. Let's do 10 breakout rooms. Go ahead and create those, and we will send you off, and we will see you back here in 10 minutes. All right. And if one of our teammates are in a room, you can decline the invite, okay? You don't have to join if you don't want to, unless you'd like to. All right, we'll see you back here in 10. And I'll put this question in the breakout session chat so you guys have it, okay? Welcome back. Hope y'all had enough time in your breakouts. I know we could really get lost in that conversation about which one you would light first. I'm gonna go ahead and pass it off to Dr. Palmer to do our report back.
Awesome. Good morning, everyone. It's good to see everyone. And as Lisa mentioned, this is our strategic planning work session as a part of our capacity building series related to nonprofit management. And so in your breakouts, we did ask you to spend some time together, and hopefully you did some more introductions, as well as if you've already been in a breakout with some of the folks you were with, you were able to get even more acquainted. So hopefully you were able to do that. And so we ask you to reach consensus as a group in terms of which of the following items would you like first: an oil lamp, a fireplace, or a candle? And so if we could get maybe 2 or 3 of our groups to report back, and you can unmute yourself. If everyone has captured the questions, we can go back to gallery. Anyone want to go for it to kick us off?
We'll go first. In
Okay.
our group, we kind of thought this was a trick question and maybe we should light the match first. But then we went with the oil lamp, because then you could light the candle from that. And we weren't sure about the wood situation and all the other things. So we worked it through, but we would probably go with the match first.
So we got one with lighting the match first, right?
Nothing
Okay.
else happens without that.
Okay. All right.
Our group said the same.
Ah, okay. So that was Melissa and Charlene, right? Okay. Anybody else want to unmute and tell us if you selected something different and why?
Well, our group said that we needed more information in order to make an informed decision, because we didn't know how much oil was in the lamp. We didn't know if there was any wood in the fireplace, and we didn't know if there was, and one person said, is it drafty in there? Because if you lit the candle, it could go out. So we needed more information in order to, really make a good decision. So that was our consensus.
All right. Okay. So you didn't make a decision. Got it. Okay.
I wasn't in a group, but I came in on my own because I was late.
Uh-huh.
The reason why I said the fireplace is because, fortunately or unfortunately, whichever it may be, I know how to light the fire with the sticks and the other things. So I would save that match. I would save that oil, but that's from having a husband who's got years of outdoor experience. Plus you've got the plethora of wood there. Or get that fire going first so that you can at least be able to see what you're doing. You can cook your food. Again, you don't know the oil or situation, anything like that, but that's why I would light the fire first.
Wow. Thank you. Lisa, do you have any comments about any of those choices? No, you're muted.
I know it wasn't unmuting. Sorry. No, I'm just thinking about their responses at the moment. No rebuttals at the moment.
Okay. All right. And so if we take a look at our questions, just like in most any situation, we're presented with a scenario and we have to kind of figure out what to do. I like the fact that what you all shared, Charlene, Melissa, Regina, and Angie, that it was varied in terms of what you would do, in terms of lighting the match first, in terms of needing more information and not making a decision at all, in terms of having more skills, right, to have more options as to what you might do first. All of those things kind of come into play here when we're trying to reach consensus as a group. in order to continue to make decisions. Well, in order to move forward or to achieve our goal. Or in this case, for today, we're talking about strategic planning. And so we just kind of wanted to kick this off with you all having a conversation in your breakouts about decision-making, planning ahead. How do we utilize the current resources that we have? All of those things kind of showed up in those responses. And so give me an idea, and I'm going to kind of stick with Charlene, Melissa, Regina, or Angie. If one of you could share what was the process that you used in terms of building consensus. And that would be more for Charlene, Melissa, or Angie, because Regina's group did make a choice.
So for our group, we all gave our individual initial thoughts, and then we really just agreed, after talking through it and hearing from one another about ideas, we all saw the logic of what we ultimately chose.
Okay, thank you.
I think we did the same. We talked about, is there firewood? Would we be able to get it lit? One of the participants shared her Girl Scout days and how they would light things. We just
love
worked
it.
it through as a team.
Okay, all right. And then Regina, give me an idea of, you all did reach consensus, which was not to make a choice of what you would do first. Give me an idea of how that conversation went.
Well, we were trying to figure out what were the resources available to us. And we talked about, with the oil lamp and the question, because I said, well, I just need to know if there's enough oil in the lamp, because we have like that first and we don't know how much is in there. And if we do fire, then how much wood is there? Do we have enough? And then the other person said, well, and also if you like the candle, and if there's drafty in there, then the candle can go out. So trying to figure out what will be the best option. We figured that we needed more information in order to make an informed decision. And we talked about with strategic plans, sometimes things are just on the surface and you need to dig a little deeper before you can make a very valid decision that could affect so many other aspects. So making sure that you understand all the parts of it before you just say, yeah, I'll go with this because that sounds the best. But what does that entail? Is there anything else behind the scenes that you're not really sure of? So we just thought we wanted to look at everything and make sure we knew all the information before we can make a valid decision.
Awesome. Thank you.
And Dr. Palmer, I'd like to say something on our end. We also did a lot of thinking out loud, which was respectful to others' opinions. Like I had an opinion on what we should start with, and then someone else chimed in and said, well, we need to think about this. And it made complete sense. So respecting others' opinion, adding that to it, thinking it through, and then making a decision together.
Thank you. Thank you for everyone for sharing. And so that really does tee us up really well to kind of move into our topic for today. Just checking in, Rebecca, we had a question, right, around program design, management, and evaluation. Did we have a question? I don't want to get past that or not in terms of the results.
Let's see. Are you referring to the poll, the Facebook poll?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, that we did one for strategic planning that we can share. Leslie, if you have it ready to go. If not, I can pull it up. Just let me know.
I don't have it pulled up, so if you could share that, that would be great.
And then Lisa had requested that one or two of us share your strategic plan. Just give us a real high level, be prepared to do that. And we'll hear two of those when we come back in terms of that. And so our question was related to strategic planning.
So we're looking at how often, the question we posed was how often do you think an organization should update, and update being the key word, its strategic plan. Looks like we had 62% said annually in terms of updating. 25% said as often as needed, and 12% said quarterly.
Great, thank you. The one
Yep.
comment I will make there is what we typically see is an update annually. However, it is just as important to monitor and track progress throughout that year. So building a report out in your board meetings is a really, board meetings and staff meetings is a really good way to keep folks abreast as to how you're moving along with the goals that you've set and action items that you've set in your plan. Thank you, Rebecca. So is there a couple of us who wouldn't mind giving us about a 2-minute just kind of overview of your process and in essence, kind of what is in your plan, not the details, but just kind of give us a general overview. And tell us who you are and of course, the name of your organization.
I can go if no one else wants to go first.
Sure.
Okay. So I'm Elizabeth Rizzo. I'm the program coordinator and evaluator for the Richmond County Partnership for Children, and we are part of the Smart Start Network. So our strategic plan is voted on and worked with the community every 5 years. But we do go through and annually update it, reviewing it with our board and as a team every year. So we have 3 main goals that we focus on. That's our program side of early childhood education, family support, and health. And then we go through and develop strategies for each of those goals of what we want to obtain for each program. Then we also have the administrative side of things where we focus on community outreach of how we're going to get that information out, how the program is going to be developed in-house, as well as our board development, how to develop our board and how they're going to assist us, and resource development of how we're going to continue to fund these items if we lose funding in a certain area.
Thank you so much for sharing. A couple of things I want to highlight. Thank you, Elizabeth, for giving that example, is the fact that their plan has 2 elements to it. An administrative side of what they're planning to do over 5 years, and then as it relates to programs. And so sometimes what happens is we miss the opportunity really to look at capacity from an administrative perspective when we're planning. So one of the things that we encourage is that at the beginning, when you're doing the preparing the plan, that you assess your capacity so that when you get to goal setting, you are aligning your goals with what it is, with the capacity of your organization to be able to achieve those goals. Because it doesn't really do us a whole lot of good if we're developing goals and we want to accomplish those goals, but then we look at the organization as a whole or the nonprofit as a whole, and we have gaps and needs and limitations in our capacity to deliver. So it is important to look at both of those areas. And so thank you for that highlight. Can we have one more? Hunter, go right ahead.
Thank you. So I work for the Salisbury Symphony, and they started their first strategic 5-year plan in 2015. And they would kind of look at it every 5 years. But then when I came on 3 years ago, we started doing a rolling 5-year plan. And then we also divided the strategic plan into what would be standing committee responsibilities. So all of our standing committees look at their portion of the strategic plan at each meeting and make sure that whatever we're doing is matching and falling into that. In January of each year, we have a strategic planning committee that requests any changes or updates from the various standing committees to kind of update the plan to make it to where we add new things in that we want to be working on, things that we want to continue to make sure we're doing well. And then we have like a record on the side that says these were things that were on the strategic 5-year plan, and this was what we did to kind of make it to where they could come off, because now it's a permanent policy in our programs.
Awesome, thank you. A couple of things I want to highlight there. that's very important. One is the Strategic Planning Committee. So oftentimes when we support nonprofit organizations in facilitating a strategic planning process, we encourage a strategic planning committee. What I like about Hunter's organization and how they do this is that that strategic planning committee is continuous. And so they are charged with helping to monitor and track. And we know that one of the responsibilities of the board is to be a part of, yes, developing the plan, but also monitoring and tracking and looking to see how we're working towards achieving the goals that we've established. Another highlight that I think is very, very helpful for the staff in the ED in Hunter's organization, or in this case, is the standing committees. The standing committees, I think if I understood you correctly, the standing committees have some responsibilities, and they are working as it relates to this, the implementation of the plan. So you've got that board engagement, and you also have that staff alignment, with what's happening in the plan. And then it appears that there is this routine monitoring and tracking as to whether or not we are achieving our goals. And so both of those examples have some, I think, some real key kind of approaches that they've taken to ensure that the plan doesn't just sit on the shelf, but it is a plan that you're actually utilizing, and it's being implemented collectively by the staff and the board. Lisa, I don't know, do you have any comments about any of what both of them shared?
Well, I was just going to say the common theme that you already mentioned it, that I heard was teamwork, obviously coming together to make decisions, planning choices, timing of when you do it. These are just some common themes, direction, right? Outcomes in terms of what, make sure you're hitting them. So those are some of the overarching common themes I heard.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right. Thank you. Thank you both so much for sharing. And so we're going to kind of jump into kind of an intro of our work, and then we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back and really start to do some work as it relates to our topic for today. So if we could go to slide 12, and then if I could get all of us to turn in your workbooks. Turn in your workbooks to page 57. So here is the lineup for what we are going to focus on today. So we're going to spend some time looking at kind of the startup and what we need to think about when we're getting geared up to do a strategic plan in terms of the development of the plan, yes, but also the process that we're using. And so when you look at this checklist, this is very common. These are very common elements of a strategic plan, regardless of the size of your budget, regardless of the size of your organization. The process walks us through each of these checkpoints. And so in your workbook, we have handouts and worksheets that go along with each of these areas. And so I don't know if you have some paper clips nearby, or if you want to just fold the corner of your of the pages that I tell you to as we're going through this section. What I want to do to start us off is to have you either paper clip these pages together as it relates to each one of these, or just kind of fold your tab. We have provided you with a wealth of information and resources. And so we just want to make sure that that you understand kind of what you have in front of you. Where you see the blue highlights, when we did the capacity assessment, these are the areas that you all indicated that you really wanted to do more building of capacity. The goal setting and developing objectives, writing the plan, implementing the plan, monitoring, tracking progress. And so we're going to spend some time on these and revision. And I do believe the SWOT analysis kind of came in there as well. But this was the emphasis from the collective aggregated information that we were able to review when we all did the individual capacity assessments of our organization. So are we ready to begin kind of organizing these handouts? Now, these are in order, so I'm just asking you to just kind of group them. This is your choice, of course, but I think it'll help you to refer to these sections a little bit easier as we're working through this. So pages 57, we're at startup. Page 57 through 62. So kind of startup. Those are the pages that go with that first checkpoint. Pages 63, the preparing the plan. Pages 63 through 67 is our preparing to plan section. Okay. And so we've got several elements and items that we want to cover there. And then we have a section on conducting the needs assessment and doing and engaging in asset mapping. So the needs assessment, in terms of thinking about the purpose of the needs assessment, that starts on page 68. And that runs through, really that runs through page 81. That's through page 81. So I'm just kind of giving us a way to group these. They're already in order. I'm just kind of having you to just kind of put those together. So 68 runs you through page 81. Now, when we look at pages 68 through 81, I'm going to go ahead and tell you there are some tips in there that focus on when we're doing a needs assessment, if we're doing interviews, if we're doing focus groups, if we're using different, if you choose to use these methods to learn and understand the needs as it relates to the mission and vision of your organization, there's some tips around how you frame questions if you're doing interviews and focus groups. We'll look a little bit more at that, but I just want you to know what's there. And so even though it's page 68 through 79, I'm sorry, 81, when we get in there, it's going to be, I'm going to break that up even more. So I just want you to know that. When you get to asset mapping, that's page 82 through 83, that's 82 and 83. So that's what you have there. If you want to paperclip those two, or just fold back page 82, that's a way to do that. And then 84 and 85, you've already seen this information before, but we include this here in terms of what does capacity mean, what does capacity assessment mean, and what does capacity building mean? We've already utilized this. And then page 85, we were introduced to this in the very first session, and that is the principles and practice approach and framework when we're looking at capacity. And we'll spend just a tad bit of time around when we're doing a needs assessment is just as important to look at capacity. That's really kind of the point there. And then when you get to page 86 and 87, this is referencing mission and vision. And we'll talk about that there too. So that's the mission and vision. And then goal setting and objectives. This is page 88 through page 93. 88 through page 93. These are our goals, our action steps, our outcomes. Just taking a look at that. I'm still on our checklist that's on the screen here. SWOT analysis, page 94 through page 96. So again, you can paperclip that or kind of fold page 94, and that way you can reference that section pretty quick. I'll tell you something else that's helpful. If you have a Post-it, you could put a little Post-it there and create you a tab. You could do that as well. And then when you get to writing the plan, the SWOT analysis is on page 93 in your workbook. I see that in the, what's on page 92? The person who put that in the chat. What's on page 92 in your workbook?
It's, hang on, it was Ken. So on 92 is the action words.
Okay, perfect. Okay,
But,
okay. Thank
Yeah,
you.
because I think we're somewhere back a few things from looking at everybody posting that
It's
there's,
one off.
yeah, it's one off.
Okay, okay. All right. Sorry.
That's okay. Just as long as we're following.
Yes, yes, yes. Okay. All right. So, so the SWOT is 93. Is that what I heard?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay. All right. So that's going to run you. That's going to run you up through 95 then instead of 96. Okay. And then writing the plan, which is 96 through, I think it's just 2. That's 96 and 97. Okay. All right. And 98, we're at writing and implementation. So writing and implementing the plan. Writing and implement the plan. That's 98. And then monitoring, tracking our progress is 99. And then our very last page is 100. I like the fact that that ended on 100. So again, this is just kind of grouping your handouts. We have quite a bit of territory to cover today. There are going to be some hands-on elements of what we do. We do highlight the fact that equity, diversity, and inclusion is a part of our work, and it is infused in all of these steps, taking into consideration what is or is not equitable in terms of what we're working on, diversity and its place in this process, and then also inclusion. And keep in mind that equity, diversity, and inclusion is one of our principles as well. And you can find information about that in terms of practices in the principles and practices guide. So if we could go back to gallery, I just want to take a look at all of us as we, again, we get geared up for strategic planning. So I will talk us through these page numbers as well. As we kind of go to each section, I'll tell us where we should be and what information we should have. When we finish with strategic planning, as with all of our sessions, you will have a library of resources that you can refer to as you are either getting geared up to start up the strategic planning process, as you are in the middle or implementing the strategic process, and or if you have arrived at a point where you're looking at revisions and you want to revisit that. So just kind of know that we're going to be walking through this morning, and I'm going to just kind of ask us all to try to stay as engaged and with us as possible, because we start moving along, it's kind of hard to kind of backtrack and then to begin to kind of catch us all up. So just kind of help me help us be able to do that. And Lisa, I think we have some comments in the chat.
I'm on mute. I'm sorry. I think more or less the pages. Angie says, I'm so very happy to see this. FCA is beginning to work on the strategic plan, and this is going to be so much be helpful. Rest of the comments were just about the page numbers.
Okay, great. All right. I didn't want to miss anything there.
Mhm.
So we are going to take a 5-minute break. The time is now 10:17. So how about we come back we'll get a couple extra minutes. How about we come back at 10:25? Does that sound good? So let's take that break. And then we're going to come back and get started.
Dr. Palmer, I have one quick question.
So if we could reference, and again, I want to make sure I got the right page number here. Strategic planning defined, if we could go there, that's page 57. Am I right with that page number? That is page 57 of your workbook. So we've heard examples of what strategic planning is. We've spent a little bit of time hearing from our colleagues as to how they engage in this process. And that is probably one of the most important parts to understand about strategic planning. It is a process. And so we have it defined here as a way or effort to produce fundamental decisions and actions that shape and guide what our nonprofit is, what our nonprofit does, and why our nonprofit does the work that it engages in. And so I want to break that down just in terms of just making sure contextually that we're all starting off at the same place. So in terms of the definition here, so it is a process, and so that's important for us to keep in mind. Strategic planning is a way of formalizing our vision in the context of having some objectives and some explicit instructions on how to achieve the vision. In terms of thinking about formalizing our vision, the strategic plan helps us to identify the what, the how, and the why we do what we do. Another point, third point is it is a guide. It's a guide for the staff. It's a guide for the board, and it helps us to keep our work focused. And also it gives us a way to just kind of monitor, and it gives us an outline of what it is we're supposed to be working on as an organization. And I'll go back to the one example that was given where there were two elements to that plan. That plan had an administration in terms of the management of the nonprofit and what the strategic planning looks like there. And then also in terms of the actual programs and the work that we do in terms of the programs and services that we deliver. The guide, serving as a guide, it also helps us to be able to give the board members, our board of directors, an update on what it is that we do. And then ultimately, the strategic planning process yields us a plan. We ultimately end up with a plan in hand that we can use to kind of help us to guide and do all the work that we do. If we go to the next slide in our PowerPoint, we have this is kind of breaking it down again. And so I've given you kind of how to organize this. So in terms of the definition, we're gonna do the truth and myth worksheet. And then we've already talked about the process. Our colleagues shared with us how we might involve a strategic planning committee. And then there are also some choices that we can make. But I do want to start off with our truth and myth worksheet. And so we're going to do this in our space together. This is going to be shared with you on the screen here. So if we could go to that. Just the worksheet at this point. So what we want to do is give you an opportunity to just answer these questions. And this is on page 58 it's on page 58 in your workbook as well. So go to that, and I'm gonna just go silent here for a couple minutes while you complete the strategic planning, truth or myth. Okay, hopefully we've all been able to kind of work through that. And so let's see kind of where we how we scored these. So in terms of truth or myth, and if we could go to the gallery on this, since we all have it in our workbooks, that would be great. Thank you. So our first question is, strategic planning is systematic in that it calls for following a process that is both structured and data-based. Truth or myth? And you can use the chat if you like, just showing us a T. We got true, I see true. Yes, this is true. And I've already talked about the fact that it is a process and it is structured. Strategic planning is a substitute for the exercise of judgment by leadership. Truth or myth? Yes, 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 myth. I see Andrea's M. Is that an M? Yes, thank you. Strategic planning is a smooth, predictable, linear process. That is most certainly a myth. It takes on a life of its own once you get started, depending upon what the assessments, the needs assessments, the asset mapping, the feedback, it depends on what all that tells us. That informs the process. So while we have 8 to 10 steps that we follow, it depends on what emerges out of those steps as to how that actual process will work. Number 4, strategic planning guides the acquisition and allocation of resources. Correct, that is a true. 5, the strategic planning process is about building commitment. Yes, 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 I see truths coming through. So commitment from our staff and commitment from our board. We do want to make sure there's buy-in. That's why we try to engage both in the process. We even engage the community in the process as well, or there's opportunity to do that. Number 6, strategic planning predicts the future. So we've got myth, and then we've got, this typically happens for this item. We'll get some truths, some say it's true, some say it's a myth. It definitely informs us as to kind of what we can anticipate in the future, but it's not a sure thing. You know, theoretically, we'll map out all that we want to do, and then of course, it happens, the plan is implemented and things evolve. So I'll say, from your perspective, it could be true, it could be a myth. So in terms of that. And number 7, what do we have? Strategic planning involves choosing specific priorities. That's a large part of what strategic planning is all about. Is about us trying to set some priorities and trying to, because some strategic plans will have short-term and long-term goals and objectives. And so it just kind of depends on how you frame and how you organize your plan. So again, keep in mind that as we work through this process, while there are general steps, each step is customized or should be customized to align with your organization. So that is important. Lisa, I think we've got a request in the chat. Are you asking me to repeat the answers? Is that what we're?
Please review all 7 at the end, just true or false. I had to answer. Oh, she's just, yes, she's asking to.
Okay,
review.
so how about we do it this way? 1, 4, 5, and 7 were true. 6 was true or myth, and the others were myth. So you only had 2 myths, 2 and 3. Does that help? Yes, okay.
Mhm.
All right, great. So again, in terms of thinking about the material that you have, so we focused on what the definition is. We talked about what's true and what's mythical about strategic planning. I think these 2 kind of pieces of information could be very helpful that you could use with your staff, and you could also use this with your board, just to educate them. Quick tutorial. This is what strategic planning is. These are some elements of it. And then when you get over to 59, what we do here is we just kind of highlight some more elements of what strategic planning is all about. So it just gives you some information that you can share. When you get to page 60, you heard me refer to the fact that there are about 8 to 10 steps in the strategic planning process. Well, here they are. And these steps are pretty typical, whether you bring in a consultant to do it, whether you identify one of your board members. This does happen. Sometimes our board members are skilled at this, and they might be able to facilitate the process or help with it. If you've got a strategic planning committee, they very well can lead kind of walking through these steps. However, each step should be customized to be in alignment with your organization. We talked about committee. In developing a committee, you might say to yourself, well, who should serve on this committee if we establish one? One of the things that I will say, I do think it's a healthy practice to have a board member chair the strategic planning committee and working along with the executive director, but definitely bringing in individuals that represent your stakeholder groups or your constituency groups. It just depends on what it is that who you're wanting to be involved in the process. I would not have a large committee, maybe 3 to a half a dozen individuals that are steering the process. But I do think it's important. The more I assist nonprofits with doing strategic planning, the more I am advocating for have a committee, because that committee can really help the executive director kind of ensure that this process that we get through this process. Again, we are still on startup. We haven't even gotten into the particulars in terms of creating the plan. This is just getting geared up to do a plan. So keep that in mind. I know I say this a lot throughout the Institute, but this really is my favorite handout, Lisa. Like, this is my favorite. I really like this particular handout because it gives you some clue in of some decisions you need to make as it relates to how you go about developing a strategic plan. And so we give you just some prompts here in terms of what you need to be thinking about, and then the choices that you are going to have to make as to how you go about doing this. And so will you have a Will you have just internal stakeholders involved in the process, or will you have other stakeholders involved? How long would the process last in terms of the length and time it takes? I will say what I'm finding nowadays, and Lisa, please chime in at any point, but what I'm seeing more of, it's taking us, especially if your organization has probably more than 3 or 4 staff, and you got a fairly significant size board, like 12 or more, it's going to take about a year, like to really do a strategic, go through the process, and it be a healthy process and it be impactful. It's not something you want to rush through. And you also want to make sure that as you're going through the process, what you're learning is informing how you take the next step in the process, because you're learning a lot about your community, about your organization, about your stakeholders. And so I think that's important. Lisa, I'm going to pause there. I don't know if you have some comments.
No, I agree. I think involving with the center, we're still involved in our strategic plan, and I would say we've been at it for about a year now. Again, because you have to, if you're having community input, you want to make sure that as you're writing the plan, and as Dr. Palmer will go into later, your mission and vision has to, making sure you're in line with that and you're not drifting off someplace else. So yes, I think it takes about a good, maybe a year and a half to get through it.
Yeah. And if you think about it, the North Carolina Center for Nonprofits is a statewide organization. So feedback is coming from various levels.
Right.
And that takes time, and we'll get into some details in terms of time too, but it can take some time for you to kind of get through the process. You got to write the plan. Oftentimes there's a retreat for the board. I'm doing more retreats with staff as well. So it's like 2 different retreats, and then sometimes you bring them both together. It just depends on the approach that you use. So especially when you get to the goal setting and goal writing, it is all in how you design it and kind of what you want to do as it relates to that. And then do you want to include a facilitator from the outside, and how you're going to do that? So strategic planning choices. I like the quick reference of this particular handout. The next thing we're going to focus on is your organization ready to plan? So we've got a little checklist here that we want you to complete. And we're moving into the preparing to plan here. So if we could go to that slide. Thank you. So preparing to plan. Again, we haven't even gotten to writing the pieces yet. We're just trying to get grounded in what this task involves. And so we're posing the question, why plan? Is your organization ready to plan? And then involvement and commitment. Who should be involved? Useful documents, choices and decisions we have to make, and the work plan. We are going to go into a breakout once we kind of work through each of these items. And so in your workbook, you have a little assessment here, and it's titled, "Is your organization ready to plan?" So we want you to spend some time completing this assessment. So I'm just going to go silent here for a second and let you do that. You're scoring your organization, utilizing 1 for definitely, 2 for maybe or not sure, and 3 for definitely not. So where a statement has 2 parts and you would answer definitely to 1 part, but not to another, then go with the weaker response, because we sometimes get that question. Okay. Just in terms of thinking about what our scores are. So we were to give ourselves a 1 if this was more true or more ready, and for an item, and then a 3 if this was not true or less ready, is how I identify it. So more ready, we would have given ourselves a 1 on all of these, and the rate would be 10. And if we could go to the gallery, that way I can see everybody. I can see any reactions that I'm getting. And then, you know, if you had 30, that means you gave all 10 a 3, then you are less ready. So just kind of keep that in mind in terms of your rating. I see a 14 in the chat. Thank you for starting to do that. Several 14s, 15, 11 to 12. Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. So it doesn't look like we have any less than, well, there's a 19. It doesn't look like we have any less than. So we're fairly ready, right? We're fairly ready to engage in this work of strategic planning. And so again, here's another little tool that we could use to have some discussion. I see starting a new organization with a 24. So yeah, it does take time. And also, you know, sometimes when staffs are smaller and organizations are starting up, nonprofits are starting up, it takes a little while before you really get to a point where strategic planning is going to be an effective task, I'll just say, to engage in. It's not to say you can't go through the process, but you may not have some of the elements of what's expected in place. And so you want to definitely be patient with yourself and give yourself some time there. So in terms of thinking about kind of what else we have in this section, we also have, if you look, I want to make sure I've got my page numbers right. So if you go to, so you should be pages 63 to
63 to 67.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you. 63 to 67. So what we have here for you is we have definitely the Ready to Plan worksheet and your readiness. Then we have who should be involved. And this gives us some indication, and we've been talking about this the whole time, but, you know, do you want a facilitator, having a strategic planning committee? This is another quick reference to help you to start to design how you want this to unfold. We've already talked about 66. It accompanies the previous page. And then in terms of the actual work plan, in terms of what kinds of activities do you want will be involved, that's where those steps go, the 8 steps or the 10 steps, that goes there. And then how do we want to gather information from our stakeholders to inform what's in our plan, and talking about timeframes and outcomes. So these are all reference points for us as we're going through this process. Now, at this point, we have gone over quite a bit already. And so what we would like for you to do in breakouts is we would like for you to spend some time continuing to review what we've covered so far and have some discussion around the usefulness of the information that we've shared so far. So what we've shared so far, how useful could this information be for you if you're a startup? and how useful, if you've been at this for a while, can this information be in that process? Now, I do want to show you one other piece of information before you go into the breakouts. And these are documents that are also helpful when you are getting ready for strategic planning. And these documents and information will help inform you as you're trying to determine how you want to design the actual doing of and developing of a strategic plan. So team, if we could show useful documents. Now, this piece of information is not in your packet. It will be in the wraparound, but I do want you to see it so you can make a note that this is coming, but useful documents. And then we're going to go into breakout. So, okay, Lisa, this is one of my favorite handouts. So some of the information that informs us about engaging in the strategic planning process or helps us engage is information that you're going to be referring to throughout the process. And so some of the documentation that would be helpful for you to kind of gather together will be mission related documents, so information that helps us to understand better what your organization does. So any information about programs, any information about client satisfaction or participant satisfaction, any information about progress that you've made, reports that you have, any of that type of, or the previous plan, if you've already engaged in strategic planning. Another type of documentation is financial documents and fundraising information. So your audit, financial reports, if you have a fund development plan, that kind of information is helpful. Capacity documents, like your org chart, any kind of policies, personnel policies, volunteer information. How does your data, your IT system work? It just depends, because think about it. When you're doing a strategic plan, you are focusing on every element of that nonprofit. So some of your goal setting may be around physical infrastructure, meaning you're going to do something to your building, or there's something on your campus where your organization is, or the property that your organization is. Maybe you've got to do something there. Maybe there are repairs that you have to make. All those kinds of things kind of come into play around that capacity documents. And then governance documents. Angie, I see your hand, but I'm going to get through this real quick. Governance documents, your bylaws, your board minutes, your board roster, committees, all of that is these are all documents that could be helpful. And again, this particular piece of information is not in your workbook. This will come in your wraparound. But this is another piece of information that we want you to have in terms of documents that can help kind of guide you through and be references to help inform you related to the strategic plan. So if we could go back to gallery. So in your notes real quick, before you go into breakout, just make a note, useful documents. That's a resource that's coming your way. So just kind of make a note of that. This again, well, I already said it. It's one of my favorite handouts. But anyway, I like that handout. It has everything right there for us. Now, let's see. Want to make sure that I don't leave anything out of that section. Now we're going to go into breakout, and we want you to just have a real quick conversation about the usefulness of what we've shared so far. How useful do you think this information could be to you? And so, Rebecca, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Great. We set aside 15 minutes for this one. Is that still okay, Dr. Palmer?
No, I think I want to bring that back to about 10 minutes.
10. Okay.
And
great.
if we let's do 7 because I want to make
Okay.
sure I get to what I need to get to. Let's do
Got it.
7 minutes and
Okay.
then we'll come back and we're going to rock and roll, y'all. So just not literally, I don't have a band or anything like that, but you know what I mean.
We could start a band. It would be fun. A Zoom band. All right, everybody. I got you broken up into your groups. We've got 10 breakout rooms. There's about 5 people in each room, and we'll see you back here in about 7 minutes. Thanks. And we're just discussing the usefulness of the information so far and how it applies to you and your organization.
On track with my page numbers.
It's being
Page
recorded.
page 68, literally page 68 through 83, or is it 67 through 72? We're starting with purpose of a needs assessment, and we're ending with the worksheet. So let's talk about that data and how you gather that data. So in your packet, you've got a needs assessment section. And here, what we help you to understand is why we do a needs assessment. And the title of the page that I'm on is Purpose of a Needs Assessment. When we do a needs assessment, we are gathering data and information from our stakeholders to help inform us as to what we need to focus on over the next year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, whatever increment you've selected. You're gathering that information. That's where the data comes from. And so you are looking at need, but you're also looking at assets. So if you go to page, and I'm going to have you moving around with your pages, just so you know what you have. You have a page, it's either 81 or 82, purpose of asset mapping. When we asset map, we're looking at those resources that we might need that align with what it is that we're trying to do in our plan. And as it relates to our mission. And so some of the assets we will already know about. We will already know who our partners are, who our collaborators are, what facilities will we need for our work as it relates to our mission. And so you are identifying those resources that are going to be of assistance or aid to you and actually doing all that you are anticipating as it relates to your plan. Now, this is something you want to pay attention to with asset mapping. Oftentimes, when you get towards the end of that strategic planning process, you will have identified new assets, like assets that you didn't even know existed, because you have been querying your stakeholders and asking them questions about how this work can continue. And oftentimes you will learn about assets, as well as you might uncover some needs that you didn't anticipate as well, which is what we expect. So in your packet, what we've provided is that when you're doing your needs assessment and or when you're trying to determine assets, you may very well want to do interviews or focus groups. So what you have in your packet is you have questions that you might ask to individuals who are in a focus group. You have information and tips about how to do focus groups. If you have a facilitator, a designated facilitator who's experienced in doing this, this tool will be very helpful for them to help you. If you're going to survey, if you're going to do any kind of surveying to try to learn more about the needs, then that's what you see next in this packet of information. So you are collecting data from individuals through interviews, focus groups, and you're also doing surveying. We have a whole section to help us to, or prompt us really, to think about how we want to set up our survey or who we want to survey. And in terms of, you're either on 78 or 79 page, the need analysis question. So once you have all these results back, what is the results telling you? What does the data tell you? And again, this is one of those parts of the strategic planning process that you may very well have to secure a facilitator to help you to do this part of what you do. Now, in this workshop or in this session, what we do is we try to orient you to what your options are. And then it's kind of up to you, your board and your nonprofit, what the options that you choose. And so this is very helpful in that regard. And so,
Sorry, Dr. Palmer, we just had a quick question. I thought
Yeah.
you were ending. If you're
No, go ahead.
if you're starting this new strategic planning process, do you recommend doing the committee to meet first and then take it to the board? So would you recommend a strategic planning committee to meet, then take it to the board?
I do think you want to get the buy-in from your board from the onset. And so if you do nothing else, get the board's support and in an exploratory, let's just say, group, which could ultimately become that strategic planning committee. But I would get buy-in because you're going to want board members as a part of that committee in some form or at some level. And so it is a practice that the board provides significant leadership to the strategic planning process. So that's how I would respond to that. Okay. So again, in terms of thinking about the needs assessment and the asset mapping, that's really what this kind of boils down to is what will be the purpose of your needs assessment, meaning the focus, and then the process that you're actually going to use to actually understand what the need is. Now, for those of you who are brand new to this, I would poll my board and I would find out if there are any board members who have some experience in strategic planning. And I would utilize them as a resource to help to start thinking about how to go about doing this, especially if this is completely foreign to you. For those of you who have been doing this for a while, you may want to kind of revisit who's on your board who has this experience. That could be very, very helpful. When you have skills on your board and your staff, including yourselves as executive directors and presidents and CEOs, obviously that learning curve is a little narrower and it doesn't seem like a heavy lift. But if you're very limited in your understanding, be patient with yourself until you get some really good footing and some groundedness in what it is that you want to do and how you want to do it. So that's what I would say to that. So that's what you have in this packet in terms of needs assessment. Also, something else to mention here is that once you have gathered your data and once you've conducted the needs assessment and you have identified what your assets are, you want to kind of create or determine how do you want to share that information? How will you share it with the staff? How will you share it with the board? And do you want to share it with the community? Minimally, you're going to share the results with your staff and your board. Some nonprofits go a step further and they share what they've discovered with their community. And so you want to think about that. So I just want you to know what you have here. You have resources in here. If you decide you want to do a public forum or you want to share with the community what the results are, you've got a little tip sheet there. If you want, typically there's going to be a final report of some sort in terms of sharing and giving that information back. If you're in a town where you have a college or university or a community college, you may be able to tap that resource to kind of help with your needs assessment and your asset mapping. The other thing I would say, if you're not in a position where you can either afford or you just have some capacity limitations, you can always use secondary data related to your mission and your vision that you can review to help you to determine what needs are and also what assets are. So you may not be in a position where you can survey your constituents or that you can host focus groups, but you may very well have at your disposal information that can inform the needs in your community related to what you do. If you're in a municipality like a city or a town, they typically have information about the city or the town as it relates to where the needs are and where there might be gaps in terms of providing the support and help that people need that align with your mission and your vision. So I know that was a mouthful, but that's in essence what doing a needs assessment and asset mapping is all about. And we're going to provide 2 links in the chat for you. One is a needs assessment guide, and then the other is there are 2. One is a needs assessment guide and one is a workbook. So we're going to provide those links for you in the chat, just as additional resources to help you. And that will also be shared. Now, team, correct me if I'm wrong, but that'll also be shared in the wraparound. So needs assessments and asset mapping. I hope you can start to see why the time frame for doing strategic planning, Lisa and I commented, you're talking about a year, because you don't want to rush it. And again, if your nonprofit is fairly small, I'm working with a nonprofit right now. They have 2 staff and they have a board of about 9. And so they're doing a strategic plan for the very first time. And I believe they've been in existence since 2015. So they've not done a strategic plan. So just kind of give you an idea of that, but they're ready to do it now, so that's important. When we're trying to identify need and assets, it takes time, depending upon what tools you use to do that. I mentioned in the intro of this that you have 2 repeats of information that we've shared already. And that's what capacity is and what capacity assessment is and what capacity building is. And then kind of looking at capacity from your current condition in terms of build, thrive, and sustain. So that's just additional information to support what it is that we're talking about here. Asset mapping, needs assessment, capacity assessment. Needs assessment, asset mapping, capacity assessment. That's the takeaway from this part of our work. And pages 67, 68, really all the way up through page 84, 85, that's where that information is. Okay. It takes a minute to do a needs assessment and it takes a minute to do asset mapping. So that's important. Do I have any questions, team, in the chat? Are we good in terms of that? Okay. Just want to make sure that we don't. So,
You're good. Mhm.
Okay, great. Thank you. So we're going to take a break here and we're going to do a 5-minute break here. We're going to come back and we're actually going to do some hands-on work as it relates to developing the components of the actual plan itself. So we're going to do some hands-on work in developing the plan itself. And we will continue to work through strategic planning today. So it is 11:18. So we're going to come back at 11:25. So actually that's 7 minutes. So 11:18, we'll be back at 11:25. Our session today, Lisa shared with us these touch points. And then we again looked at this in terms of what we would be focusing on today. So we've talked about startup. We've helped us to understand the whole notion of preparing to plan. We've given you kind of the scope of work involved in doing a needs assessment and asset mapping. And now we're going to get into what is pretty much the heart of the actual plan itself, which is a focus on the mission and vision of your nonprofit, goal setting and objectives, a SWOT analysis, and then taking that information and continuing to write and build out the plan. The information that we have to share related to implementing the plan, monitoring and tracking and revision, or evaluation and revision, is pretty direct. It's not as, I think we have maybe like one handout for each of those. But where we're going to spend the next majority of our time is around goal setting and writing goals and writing action steps and objectives, and then also doing what we call a SWOT analysis. So we want to do some hands-on work there. We can go to slide 19 now. So one of the areas of work that is, or task that's necessary when we are doing or trying to write and develop a strategic plan is to take time to revisit our mission and our vision. And what the hope is that we will confirm that the mission and the vision is intact and that we don't need to alter it and we don't need to change it. So we look at that and we study it and we begin to kind of ask ourselves, are there any edits that we need to make? Are there any edits that we need to make? And so if we could go to the gallery now, you have 2 worksheets in your workbook. One is titled Mission Statement Worksheet, and I asked you to put a paper clip on that. And the other one is titled the Vision Statement Worksheet. And what I just want you to do for just a couple of minutes is I want you to take a look at your current mission statement and take a look at your current vision statement. And some of your organizations have a vision statement and some may not. I encourage you to have one because it's a way of communicating and messaging kind of where you are now and what you're working towards as an organization. I do know that there are some nonprofits that don't have vision statements. That's not to say that that is not a good practice per se, but I do think it's healthy for your board, your staff, your volunteers to know or have a sense of what the vision is for this organization. So minimally, you need a mission statement. Ideally, you would have both. And if you don't, the strategic planning process is a good time to craft that vision statement because you're doing the work already. So you could just go ahead and kind of lean in a little bit and try to craft the vision. The vision is crafted very similar to the mission, except it's futuristic. It's what we want to see down the road. So I'm just going to go silent for just a couple of minutes, let you look at your mission, let you look at your vision, and then just make some notes in the bottom half of your worksheet. At the top, you would have the actual mission statement. And then the bottom, those are just notes that you're making in terms of how you might change it or how it might be adjusted. Or you may say, we don't want to change it. We don't want to adjust it. So I want you to look at the mission and vision. And I'm just going to give you a couple of minutes to just make some notes about that. And then we're going to move on to goals.
Dr. Palmer, if you can just quickly you have another couple of questions that are similar. Can you provide a concise summary of what the difference is between vision and mission? Again.
So I'll repeat.
Mhm.
The mission is what you are maintaining. So it is what you are doing. The purpose of your nonprofit is how I would identify your mission. Your vision is how you want to see that mission changed over time. So if my mission, is to eliminate racism, right? Or my purpose and the focus of my organization is to eliminate racism. What does that look like once it's achieved? And then that's your vision. And then the question of what does that look like comes from your board and your staff or any other stakeholders that you invite to chime in about that. So your vision is futuristic and the mission is the springboard for crafting the vision. And I've been talking and some of you haven't had a chance to think about that task that I gave you, but this is a part of that when you start building the plan, the mission and the vision go in the plan. There's a place for the mission and vision in the plan itself. And so it's real healthy to have that there. And I'm going to give you just a couple more minutes because some of you may have noted that you don't see any changes there, or there's nothing about that you want or need to change. I want to get to writing our goals. There's an interesting question here in the chat, and let me just kind of comment on that. I think I've got one, Lisa, that says, oh, you did that one already. That's the concise one. And then that next one is.
Did you say the mission was the springboard or the vision is the springboard?
So here we go. It depends on how you work, right? Or how you think about it. Some of us start with the end in mind and we craft the mission, right? Some of us start with the beginning in mind and we craft the vision. I don't want to put you in a box, but what I did say is that, yes, the mission can very well serve as a springboard to your vision, but it could work in the other direction as well. The vision that you have for this nonprofit organization could very well help you capture what the mission needs to be in order for you to be able to achieve that.
So Charmaine mentioned mission is springboard for crafting the vision. And then Nicole, the mission is what we stand for. The vision is how we see it being carried out.
Very good. Very, very good. And again, I think when you decide that you want to revisit your mission or vision, or you want to craft it for the very first time, I think I would go back to that resource that we shared with you about who should be involved. And you begin to identify who should be involved in helping you to be able to kind of work that through. So let's go into goals and action steps and outcomes. Lisa, no, I think this is my favorite.
Oh my gosh.
I think this is my favorite.
Have you all picked up a trend here?
This is my favorite. I'm such a geek, man. I tell you, I'm just such a geek when it comes to all this. But this is exciting. To me, the strategic planning process is real exciting. It gives us an opportunity to further engage in a way that we're making a difference in our community. And we wouldn't be here, none of us, if we didn't want to make a difference in our community. And so, you know, working through developing a strategic plan brings so many things to light. And it helps us to see things hopefully differently. Even if our nonprofit is 100 years old, the strategic planning process should ignite, you know, some intent around doing something about what we learned in that needs assessment and that asset map, and also in assessing our capacity. It should just kind of give us this kind of way of, or ignite us, or Jean shared with us a moment ago and earlier about the North Carolina Center for Nonprofits is in the process of doing a refresh of its strategic plan. And Jean, I don't know if you want to comment about that or not, but, or Lisa, I don't want to.
I don't mind.
Okay.
If Lisa wants to chime in here too. What I shared with Dr. Palma a little while ago during our break is just thinking about this really robust and rich process of strategic planning and how we really dived into that when I first arrived back in 2017. And what we're doing right now is taking that, making sure that we haven't let that sit on the shelf, looking at reflectively, what did we say we were going to do, and checking off what we've achieved, and then doing sort of a mid-course, not correction, but review. So we're looking at what are our strengths, opportunities, assets, et cetera, for now, so that we can lean on that as we go forward over the next couple of years. So we're not really doing a full-blown strategic plan, but I think doing these mid-course or interim reviews helps us stay on point and helps us be relevant, because we can keep asking the question, is this still important? And I will say, as Lisa talked, we did take a long time to review our vision for the center, and we did revise that. And in the process, we also looked at what our values are, and we wanted to say, are these still our values? And in fact, while our mission has remained constant, our vision and our values during this process have changed. And so the goals and objectives that we will be identifying over the next couple of months will reflect the new vision and the values that we state. So that's just a little on the ground work that we're doing that affirms all of what Dr. Palmer is really telling you.
So let's focus on what I consider to be kind of the heart of the plan, and that is the what, the how, and the why. The what, the how, and the why. So if you look at page either 87 or 88, if you look at that page, it has, it's titled Goals, Action Steps, and Outcomes. And we're going to be using all of this section for some hands-on work, okay? So the first page is Goals, Action Steps, and Outcomes. And then there's an example of a goal statement. And then there's an example of action steps to go with that goal statement. And then there's an example of an outcome statement, okay? And then there's a worksheet titled Goals, Action Steps, Outcome, okay? There's a last page, it has action words. So you're gonna need all of this resource material to help us to be able to practice writing what you see on page 88. So goals, action steps, and outcomes. If I had to kind of tell you some notes to make on this page, for goals, this is when we put into the plan, or we develop or identify the what. When we develop or identify the what. And oftentimes strategic plans will have anywhere from like a half a dozen to a dozen goals. You typically don't see 25 goals in a strategic plan. And so that is the what in terms of what our organization is trying to accomplish, both from a programmatic standpoint and an organizational standpoint. And so we craft our goals to identify what we want to do. And we do this by looking back at our needs assessment results, our asset mapping results, and our capacity assessment results to help us to identify the what. Typically, your facilitator is going to facilitate a process to help to bring out these elements of what we need to craft our goal statement. Action steps are the how. So once we have the what, we identify how. And then once we do that, we craft our outcomes, which is why. We're doing this because why? We want to achieve a particular outcome as it relates to achieving this goal. So what we did is we put an example of a goal statement here for you. We also put an example of action steps, and we also put an example of an outcome statement. So we put this here so that you would have an example, and we're also going to provide you 2 additional examples in terms of that. But before we go there, let's look at this goal. This is the what. The North Carolina Center for Nonprofits will create, develop, and establish a capacity building resource in collaboration with the nonprofit sector. And we chose High Point, including Archdale, Jamestown, and Trinity. Okay. So that's our goal. That's our what. And then what you see is we kind of broke that up because we want to make sure that our goal, if you refer back to 88, that it is specific, it's measurable, it's attainable, it's realistic, and it's timely. It has a time element to it. So that's our goal there. Then we accompanied that with some action steps. And we said we would introduce this to our community. We said that we would engage some other folks in the process. So we said we would do all of that. And then when you look at page 90, 91, this is our outcome. If we put this goal in place, then this is our outcome. If we could, I don't know if we can do this, Rebecca, on here, but our action steps have shifted in the actual document.
Yeah, I see that here.
And
I think it's just a formatting issue in Word. Sorry about that.
Okay. So we've provided you the one example in the in your workbook in terms of the what, the how, and the why. And then we grouped all of that on the one handout or item on page 88. When you go to your worksheet, we have it broken up so that you can work through creating the goal statement, the action steps, and the outcome statement. And we have 2 different examples, which is what Rebecca was showing. We have an example of what we call a program-oriented goal, action steps, and outcomes. And we also have a program one, and then we also have an organizational one. Because again, it's important to us that when we're engaging in strategic planning, that we are paying attention to the capacity of our organization to be able to achieve what we set out to achieve. And so, is it possible, team, will we be able to put that CBR, the sample for programs and sample for nonprofits, in the chat? Because we're going to go into a breakout. Now, when you go into your breakout room, we want you to agree on a goal, right? On a focus, and a set of action steps and a outcome statement. So when you go into your breakout, you're working together to identify, and you can choose program, a program related, what, how, and why, or a nonprofit organization oriented, what, how, and why. So you're going to be working together on that. And you have a sample in your workbook. Rebecca, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right, thanks Leslie for posting that sample there in the chat. You all can view that and download. And we're going to open up our breakout rooms. Looks like we've had some shuffling.
And just a quick note, Rebecca, I'm sorry. The action words are listed for you in your workbook as well, because typically our goals and our action steps are going to begin with action words. That's why we provided you that resource there. Sorry, Rebecca, I forgot.
Oh, that's okay. It's all good. That one, yes. All right.
And so it's 11:46. So if we could come back at 11:56.
Okay, 11:56. Got it.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I'm just gonna move one more of you to a different room. There we go. All right. I'm gonna open up all these rooms and we'll see you back here in 10 minutes.
And so, we've had us work in a breakout talking about the usefulness of the first parts of what it is that we worked on. So, and then of course, our second kind of part of our work is around the goals, action steps, and outcomes. And so I do want to hear from a couple of you, if we could do two, just kind of read off your goal, read off, 2 or 3 of your action steps, and tell us what your outcome statement is. And be sure to tell us if it's a program goal or organizational goal. And how about we do one of each? So I'm not sure what your groups chose. So if we could hear one program, goal, action steps, and outcome, and then a organizational one.
I don't mind sharing.
Okay.
Our goal statement, and of course we just made up a center. We didn't use any of our personal organizations. This is a program goal. By December 2023, the North Carolina Parenting Center will implement the positive parenting program for all parents. North Carolina Center will have available, that wording may be off from the group, but we'll have available for all
fine.
parents and caregivers in North Carolina, the positive parenting program. So two of our action steps were recruit and train facilitators for the program across the state, and develop an array of methods of delivery of the program, such as internet for those who don't have transportation, or if we have funding for transportation, we can provide transportation for parents.
And did you have an outcome?
We didn't get that far.
Okay, no worries. Can we hear one more?
our group, we were a little confused on the assignment, but we didn't write anything down, but we just kind of discussed with the Bull City Woodshop, like a goal is to have paid staff. So my specific goal is to have a part-time salary for the executive director by February 2023 and full-time salary by December 2023. The action steps would be something like, doing our funding, having, our committees participating in that fundraising, grant writing, that sort of thing. And making sure we're following a budget appropriately. And then I didn't really know of an outcome statement, like, yes, we did it.
Okay, got it. And let's go in your workbook to page, I'm going to reference all 3 examples that we gave you in terms of the outcome statement. It does take time to work through this, and especially when you're working with stakeholders and trying to get an understanding of where people are coming from and what it is that you ultimately want to do and the best way to go about doing it. And so when we did the outcome statement for the capacity building resource for the North Carolina Center for Nonprofits, our outcome was that we would actually have a model, right? So in the goal, we said we wanted to establish the resource and make it available to a certain geographic area. The outcome then is that as a result of doing that, we would actually have a nonprofit management model for building capacity, and that this would be a permanent resource. So it wouldn't be here today, gone tomorrow. We would develop something that would be permanent. So if you think about it that way. In the other example that we provided for you, it was more a program level, not necessarily organizational. And so what we said is that the Guilford County Resource and Referral Center will implement the Swim for Life program. And that program would teach school-age children how to swim, and by providing swimming lessons to students at New England Academy, right? Let's go to the outcome there. The outcome then is, should we be able to implement this Swim for Life program, then we would report our outcome that at least 75% of the students that were a part of the program will have learned how to swim. They would do that within 6 months, and then they'll pass a proficiency test. So in that outcome statement is layered. It's got multiple components to it. The first one was pretty singular. We're going to set up this resource, and then we're going to have a model. It's going to be a permanent model. So when you're thinking about this, we just really want you to craft or at least build the skill of developing these 3 key pieces of information: the what, the how, the why, in terms of what it is you're trying to accomplish in your plan. So that's in essence what that kind of working through that is all about. Here's a note that you want to make. Whenever we are developing the goals and we're beginning to craft this what, how, why combination, we oftentimes do it in a setting where we bring the board together and they're focusing on this, or we bring the staff together and they're focusing on this. And then sometimes once they've had some time to look at what the needs assessment and the asset mapping has shown us to identify some focus areas, we'll sometimes bring those 2 entities together. Just depends on what your nonprofit is ready for. Once we have a set of goals, another step in the process is to determine our strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats related to that goal, related to that set of action steps, related to achieving that outcome. So in your workbook, we've provided you a worksheet that I want you to go to. Your worksheet is on page 94, 95, and it's some square boxes. So the goal and the outcome that you worked on, the combination that you worked on, the what, the how, and the why, we're going to stay in the gallery space. We're not going into a breakout. I want you to craft the first thing that comes to mind to you in the ability to provide and to actually see this goal come to fruition and to see this outcome realized? So what are the strengths that exist that support being able to achieve this? What are the weaknesses that are present that might hinder us from achieving this goal and outcome? And then what are some opportunities? What opportunities are presented here? And then what threats might be there? So strengths need to be maintained or built upon or leveraged that we have. Our weaknesses, in terms of thinking about what might hinder us. Opportunities, are there any? And then are there any threats or barriers that we need to have, that we need to keep in mind? I'll go ahead and tell you, oftentimes opportunities is the area that's a little bit more challenging to think about, because you don't know sometimes what opportunities are until you start implementing the plan, and then voila, there's some opportunities there. So I'm just going to go silent for a couple of minutes. You're going to utilize what you discussed in your breakout in the what, how, and why. And you're going to identify strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats related to that. I'm just going to go silent for a couple minutes and just let you work on that. SWOT analysis. SWOT analysis is what we're doing. And the page that follows the quadrants that you have there, the page that follows is some examples. So we're giving you some examples to think about. So you don't have to kind of think of those from scratch. So again, I'm gonna go silent for just a couple minutes.
Dr. Palmer, you have a quick example. Someone's asking, a question. Can you give an example of the difference between weaknesses and threats? Oh, okay.
Yes.
Well, Rebecca just said, go to
Okay.
96 for examples. Okay. Unless they want something more than that.
The person who posted the item in the chat, can you go to page 96, 95 or 96? And actually there's kind of a dual way of using these. Does that help you? Whoever posed the question? Some examples?
She said yes.
Okay, good.
My 96 is the work plan though.
Go to 95.
95, yeah, that's works for me, thanks.
Uh-huh.
Thanks, Angela. I appreciate that. Update on the page number.
Oh, you're welcome.
One thing I kind of think about is weaknesses are sort of internal for your org, and threats are the external things, but there could also be threats internally. So yeah.
Again, whenever we are crafting the goals and the action steps and the outcomes, and we're conducting a SWOT analysis, typically this happens in a space where either the board or the staff or both are engaged in this process. Just depends on kind of where your organization, where your nonprofit is with bringing those two entities together. I do think it's a really good approach when you do this work, once you've identified the focus areas of the of what it is you want to work on over the life of the plan, to have both of these entities take a look and participate and work through this. And so that kind of leaves us with, how do we pull all of this together? So how do we pull all of this together? Keep going in your workbook, and you're going to see a page titled Work Plan Example. And then you're also going to see a worksheet. So we provided for you a work plan to kind of give you a way of visually seeing how these pieces of information might look on an actual page in the plan. So when you look at the work plan example, you'll see that we have our goal there. That was that goal that we talked about in terms of the capacity building resource. Then we have the outcome that goes along with it. That's the why. Then we have our action steps. That's the how. And we have who is responsible, right, for completing those action steps. And then we have a timeline or when those things will be accomplished. And again, you know, this is just for to kind of give you a visual of what the information looks like when you actually put it in the plan. Now, we're going to look at some other parts of the plan here in a moment, but the goals, the action steps, the action items, the outcomes, and building out the plan in this way is fundamental to most any strategic plan in terms of what you see. So I want you to kind of know that you have that there. If we could go to the PowerPoint slide 22, because this is all about pulling it together. And for the last two topics, as I mentioned when we started, we have we have some specifics here. So putting it all together, writing and implementing the plan. Most plans are going to have a table of contents. And then for each goal, there's going to be what we're calling a work plan. And that work plan is going to identify the what, the why, the how, the who, and the when. And so that's you know, one way of taking a look at that. I do want to show you at this point a table of contents. So team, if we could pull up the table of contents. And again, we're putting it all together here. We are putting it all together. So we're going to look at what the table of contents looks like or could look like as it relates to strategic planning. This is, let's see, go to, hold on a minute. I want to go to, this is, if you look in our principles and practices guide, these are the practices that we have specifically for doing strategic planning. So if your organization is at a build level, this may be kind of a way in which you can get geared up. If your organization is at a thrive level, this is how we would kind of build that up. And then if your organization is at a sustain level, and this is in the principles and practices guide. This is, yes, go to table of contents.
Is this where you want me to be?
Let's see. Kind of hold that one, Rebecca.
Okay.
And go to CBR.
Okay.
Go to, and yeah, it's going to be towards the end
Okay.
Yep, it's gonna be towards the end. I know it's a lot of information that we share here. Is that,
Yeah. So the formatting
could-
for this is difficult because in
Okay.
the desktop version, it looks a little bit strange, but
Uh-huh,
when I go
okay.
to the end of the CBR, I'm not seeing a table of contents.
Okay, then, so let me just kind of share what you typically see in the table of contents of a plan. Let's see. I want to come back. I'll come back to that. But typically what you see, we can provide a list, but I'll just give you all the list. Typically what you see in the strategic plan table of contents, you're going to have a cover page, with your logo and name and all of that. Then what you're going to have is you're going to have the actual table of contents that lists all the parts. And then what you typically see is you're going to see the mission, you're going to see the vision, you're going to see if you have value statements or principles for practice, you're going to see that. And then oftentimes there's going to be a message from the executive director or from the president and CEO. There's going to be that in there. There's typically going to be an indication of the timeline, right? So there's going to be an indication of the timeline, kind of where did this start? What did you do in between? And how did this culminate into being this plan? So you're going to have that. And then what you typically have after that is you're going to have either just a list of all the goals, just kind of outright, here are our 6 goals, here are our 10 goals. And then for every goal, you're going to have a work plan sheet like you see here. You're going to have a work plan sheet. So if you've got 6 goals, you're going to have 6 of those work plans. And then when you get to the end, oftentimes you might have an executive summary, or you can build it into the beginning where you give an overview of what you found in the needs assessment. How did the asset map turn out? What was your capacity in terms of assessment? And if you did a document review, you're going to talk about how you did that and how it informed the development of the plan. And you're also going to have a summary or just a little narrative about what did your survey results tell you? What did your focus groups tell you? What did your interviews tell you? So that information is also going to be in the plan. It's not exhaustive, that part of it, but it does give a clue in as to what was discovered and what you found out as it relates to that. And we'll provide that in the wraparound. I know that was, just in terms of walking through that table of contents. And so, so that is that. And then the next thing with the writing and implementing the plan on page 98, you have that outline there, and we're going to provide you the table of contents there too. And then monitoring and tracking progress. We're going to be keeping up with, we can go to the next slide. Monitoring and tracking the progress. We put it all together. And so we're going to be looking at goal achievement. You're going to highlight any challenges, lessons learned, and success. So those are the kinds of things that you're going to be monitoring and tracking. And literally, if you go back to the work plan, remember in the work plan, if you go back to that page, you've got the goal, you've got the outcomes, you got the action steps, and you've got some specific dates in which you wanted to achieve those things. So you can identify whether or not you achieved the goal. You can share any challenges you had. You can share any lessons learned that you had, and you can highlight any successes that you want to share there. And again, this is very helpful to report out to the board, and it's helpful to report out to the staff so that everybody's keeping up with what's happening. And then the last part of our work related to strategic planning today is the evaluate and revise the plan. This is what Jean was talking about when she shared the example of the NC Center for Nonprofits. They have an existing plan in place, and they're doing kind of a revisiting of that. They're not doing a full-fledged strategic planning process again, but they're going in and they're reviewing where they are. And we can go on to the next slide. So the evaluation and the revision is it time to do that? And I know the question came up, how often do we revise? You know, when do we make edits to the plan? The strategic plan should be a part of every staff meeting and every board meeting. And it should just be, if nothing else, a check-in. So we don't wait till a year before we begin to kind of look at where we are. We start to look at the final evaluation of that plan and revision when it expires. So we look at the timeline of when it expires, and then we decide how we're going to report out about that. Oftentimes we do presentations related to that. But here we're just going through, if it's a true revision, I mean, if it's not doing the strategic planning process again, then we're just making revisions, then that's a different approach. But if you're going to go through the whole process again, then we would go back through those steps, just like we have them highlighted. I'm going to pause there. If we could go back to the gallery. And we have, in terms of looking at the different parts of the strategic planning process, it is a very involved process. It does take time. I encourage us not to rush through it. I know sometimes I'll have nonprofits say, you know, inquire about doing a strategic plan. Well, can we do it in 3 months? Or can we do it in 6 months? Well, you could, but you're probably not going to have a very credible, deliverable when it's all said and done. Give yourself time. And what I would say is, when you look at the different parts, the first part of the process, just like today, the first part of the process takes the most time. That first part, getting geared up, trying to think about how you're going to start, getting everybody in place and all of that. Then when you get to once you've gotten the needs assessment and asset mapping and capacity assessment, that's a part of the first part of the process. Once you have all that, that informs the crafting of the goals and outcomes. And so that goes a little quicker because you bring everybody together and you work on it together. And then once you do that, it's now writing it. Like, somebody has to actually write the plan, compile it, and bring it together. And then notice at the very end, when we started talking about monitoring and tracking and trying to decide if we're going to do the whole process again once the plan expires, as opposed to a revision, those things go a little quicker. And it's built into what you do in your organization. I highly encourage each of our nonprofit organizations to infuse, once you have that plan, infuse the presence of that plan in as many places as you can, because that's what's really going to help to move the plan along. And so that concludes our topic on strategic planning. And so if I could just get some reaction from us, right now you're feeling what? Or right now you're thinking what, as it relates to where we are in this Nonprofit Management Institute, and definitely as it relates to strategic planning. You can unmute yourself or you can put comments in the chat.
Brain overload, timely, overwhelmed, but well-informed. There are not enough hours in a day.
I know.
Excited. Great information, processing. I feel overloaded with the information, but thank you.
You're welcome.
Lots of information. Thrilled. What is it? Whoa. It's coming in fast. Thrilled to have this resource on strategic planning. I've been doing this a long time, and the structure of this is really terrific, even for those with experience. Great. Good to hear that.
Thank you for that feedback.
Yeah.
So Next week, our topic is financial management, right? Fundraising and financial management. And so we'll have a guest with us from the North Carolina Center for Nonprofits for that. But we are in the home stretch. I said that last week though, didn't I? We're in the home stretch. We've got 2 more topics to go, and we're going to have a graduation. Yay, going to have a graduation. But anyway, it was great spending time with you today. I know that strategic planning has a lot of pieces to it, but it's fairly systematic once you get going. But it does take time. And so thank you for your feedback. I'll see you next week. And I'm going to pass it on to Lisa or Rebecca.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Palmer. Okay, guys, time to go get the kibbles is what they call it, to get your brain working again. And, food is comfort. So those of you that are feeling real anxious and, uptight, let's get some food so we can come back, get level again. So as Dr. Palmer mentioned, next week we're doing fundraising and financial management, and on the human resources. So we hope you all enjoy your day. Again, our team stays on for a few minutes afterwards for debriefing. So if any of you have a question or something, we had a really good after session last week. So if anyone would like to stay on for a few minutes, just ask a quick question or two, we're here, but otherwise we'll see you next week.
Bye, thank you.
You're welcome.